Reality stars will share the stage with members of Congress during day 2 of the Republican National Convention.
Scheduled speakers include House Speaker Mike Johnson, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, and Atlanta's Savannah Crisley, co-star of the show Crisley Knows Best. Tonight's theme is Make America Safe Again. This theme echoes concerns felt by almost every Georgian. The most recent Quinnipiac University poll revealed crime, immigration, and the economy were among things most, if not all of you care about. Atlanta News First political reporter Doug Reardon is live tonight inside Pfizer Forum, the site of this year's RNC.
Doug, safety already top of mind for many at the convention.
It absolutely is, guys, especially after that failed assassination attempt on President Donald Trump's life on Saturday. Of course, we talked about the increased security that's been going on here, but there is going to be so much more covered here today. As it relates to safety, we're going to talk about public safety. They're going to talk about immigration, which has, of course, been a cornerstone of the GOP platform. Since Donald Trump took office, he has really elevated it as an issue here. And so tonight, in addition to the speakers that you already mentioned, we're going to hear from some families who have been victims of crime, and also we are going to hear from some former rivals of Donald Trump in the primary. Nikki Haley, for one, who was not originally invited to this event, is going to speak in prime time to talk about making America safe again. And it's so interesting. There have been all these calls for unity in the wake of that failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. This is a really big sign that the GOP is making an effort to actually show that unity. Haley was really outcast by the MAGA Nation after she ran against Donald Trump in the primary. But just embracing her here tonight at the GOP, and especially on a night where, the focus is one of the bigger GOP issues, immigration, certainly is an interesting move by them, and one that shows a lot of unity, I think. Also, Georgia has a very big part of this conversation when we talk about the killing of college student Laken Riley at the beginning of the year. Her name was invoked at the State of the Union address. We expect to hear it quite a few times tonight as well, and so we are just awaiting for things to finish getting started here. We've done the invocation, the Pledge of Allegiance, and you can hear the Star-Spangled Banner going on behind us right now. We have a full night of speakers lined up ahead of us, and we are going to be here for all of it. Day 2 of the Republican National Convention. We're live from Pfizer Arena in Milwaukee. Doug Reardon, Atlanta News First.